Hello everybody, welcome to Soul Talker. This is actually our first food video that we've prepared for you. I'm not going to be talking in front of the screen the whole time. I'm going to show you the images of the food that I will be introducing to you. It's a very common food for Koreans, but I don't think it's as well marketed as other Korean foods to foreigners. But it is very traditional and we use or eat this food a lot in different kind of foods in Korea. But I do know that there are people, non-Koreans, that do not like the texture of this food. But I'll show you how to eat some of the foods and the different kind of food. And the first Korean food that I'm going to introduce to you is actually tteok. You could probably spell it as a D-D-E-O-K. It's not duck, it's tteok. Americans or European friends of mine that first came into touch with tteok didn't really like it because of its texture. It's sticky and sort of chewy, even gummy sometimes. And in Korea they translate it as rice cake, but I think that's a very wrong translation because it's not a rice cake. You know, we don't put cake into soup, we don't put cake into food. But in Korea we use tteok in a lot of different kind of food. And in this episode I'm going to give you an outline of a tteok and show you different kinds of tteok. And on the next video on our Korean food, I'm going to show you the different variation that we make with the tteok in our everyday life. I think it'll be interesting for non-Koreans, and for Koreans I think it'll be interesting because I've gone through different books and different sources to find out the history of those food. I'm going to be telling you about the history of the food, not just show you the food. So I'm going to go more in depth about the Korean food and the culture on our food content as well. Now that's it for my introduction, and let's go on to the main video. So this is a marketplace right by our house, and I went there to buy the tteok for filming. And I think most of the marketplaces in Korea have a place where they sell tteok because it's very commonly eaten by Koreans. And all these are different kinds of tteok. They're made from different ingredients. Some of them are nutty, some of them are chewy, some of them are plain. So it's basically something like bread, but it's just made and cooked in a different way. It's steamed instead of being baked. I'm going to show you how each tteok is different from one another. This tteok is called mangue tteok. Mangue is the name of a tree where the leaf that's lying under the tteok comes from, and mangue namu is supplejack in English. So basically what they do is when they steam the tteok, they have the tteok wrapped around the leaf. Scent of the leaf is passed on to the tteok. So when you eat the tteok, you can smell the scent of the supplejack leaf. This is called jeolpyeon. It's a very traditional Korean tteok. It's plain, it has nothing inside, and it's usually placed on the ancestral rites table as well. So that's how old the history of jeolpyeon goes. And this is called injeolmi. The brownish thing you see above the injeolmi is actually a bean powder. So injeolmi has tteok inside and it's wrapped with bean powder, so it tastes kind of nutty. And the reason why it is called injeolmi is jeolmi means like excellent taste when you translate the Chinese character into English. It's said to have been named injeolmi because a very high-ranking person had the first taste of this kind of tteok, and when they ate it, they said it tasted really good, but the tteok didn't have any name on it, so they named the tteok injeolmi. And in Korea, what we do is we put a lot of different variations outside. And this, I call it 흑인절미 because it looks black, and 흑 means black in Korean. It may look like charcoal for you, but it's actually black sesame that's been powdered and placed on top of the tteok. So this is also very nutty. It's more nutty than the regular injeolmi, and actually this is one of my favorite tteok. And this is called 꿀 tteok. This is also a very traditional Korean tteok. 꿀 means honey, so that's supposed to be honey, but I think they put sugar into it these days, but it's still very sweet, so it's a very good tteok for dessert. And these tteok, they don't really have a name for them. They're made from the tteok. Basically, tteok is made from a powdered rice that's steamed up. They make variations these days by putting in different kinds of ingredients into it to make different tastes. So these tteok can be said to be modern version of a tteok. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how chewy the textures and what it looks like when you slice up the tteok. So this is 꿀 tteok. I told you that there's honey in the middle, and what you see just squishing out was supposed to be a honey. So you see there's a hole in between, and what just fell out of the tteok is actually supposed to be honey or melted sugar. And this is the injeolmi. So the brownish thing outside is the bean powder. And when we cut it in half, you can see that it's a total duck in the middle, and you can probably see how sticky it is and how it's very chewy as well. The green color of the duck comes from mugwort or wormwood. I don't think they eat that in non-Asian countries, but we eat that a lot in Korea. So what they do is they mix mugwort or wormwood with the rice and they steam it up together, and color of it gets onto the duck and becomes green like this. So the green color comes from nature. And this is the manget duck that I mentioned, and you can see that it's wrapped around and it has some kind of ingredient in the middle. So when I cut it in half, it has red bean in it. I know that they don't eat red bean in Europe or the States. The red bean, from what I know, was introduced to Korea from the Japanese because they eat a lot of sweetened red beans. And manget duck also has those red beans in the middle. So what you can see that manget duck is a little less chewier than the injermi that we just saw. And this is jeolpyeon. And the green color, as I said, comes from the mugwort. And it doesn't have anything inside it, but it's very squishy, chewy, but doesn't have any ingredients in the middle. Same for the white jeolpyeon as well. But not all duck are as chewy or squishy like jeolpyeon. They have a different level of squishiness or the stickiness. And this is the injermi with black sesame wrapped around it. And again, it looks like charcoal, but it tastes nothing like charcoal, so don't worry about it. So it's also very sticky, as you can see, and you see the green color inside it. But the injermi are also made from the white colored duck, not just green colored. I was actually surprised that this was green colored when I've cut it. And the difference between white and green is, of course, as I've explained, is whether they mix up the rice with the mugwort or not. And this is variation of modernized kind of duck. You can see that it's also very sticky. And you see a lot of different kind of nuts and ingredients wrapping the duck. And this duck is actually made from a mixture of pumpkin and rice. So all the color is made from natural ingredients. It has nothing artificial in it. You can see that the beans are placed on top of the duck or inside the duck, and the brownish color on this duck is a little sugary. So this duck is kind of sweet. And the black line in this duck is actually black sesame you saw on top of the injermi. And I'm going to cut this duck because, when you slice it up, you'll see a shape inside it, and you can see that it also has a different ingredients inside the duck. So they try to nurturize the duck so that it can become a sort of a meal for Koreans. So what they would do is they would put the duck in the refrigerator, freeze it, and take one out before you go to bed so that it will melt within the night. When you wake up, it would have returned to its normal status. So they eat one duck and they go to their work. So basically, Koreans eat duck for their breakfast, which a lot of Koreans did during the Joseon dynasty. And this is sort of an extra kind of duck that I'm going to bring about. It's called chapsal duck, or in Japanese I think it's also called mochi. It also has red bean in it, and they have a tradition in Korea for giving chapsal duck as a present for people prepared to take any kind of exams, as a good luck present, because you know how it's sticky? The expression in Korea called getting admission is same with being glued onto something. So they give the chapsal duck as a present, wishing them good luck to get admitted to whatever they're applying for. And as you can see, it doesn't only have the red beans in it, it also has some nuts added onto it. And these are not the only duck that we have in Korea. They actually made it into a cookie or a dessert. When you see the exterior of this, it just looks like a chocolate pie or chocolate cookie. But you can see that I can sort of squish it in. It's not all hard on the outside. And when I cut it in half, you can see that there are chocolate looking color in between the duck. And that's chocolate. So this is basically a duck that's wrapped around chocolate with chocolate inside. It tastes like a chocolate pie, except that it has a texture of a duck. You can see that there are a lot of Koreans that actually like the texture of the duck. But all these duck weren't the common duck that existed from our ancestral years, and the duck in the Joseon era were probably not that fancy. But what I believe to be the original shape of a duck is still passed on these days, and actually my mom makes this kind of duck. It's called ketduck. So what our ancestors did is, when they didn't have much to eat in the winter, they grounded up whatever grains they had, and they added whatever ingredients they could get to the powdered rice or grains. They steamed that up and ate that as a meal because they couldn't grow any meal and they didn't have the proper technology to store the meal safely over the winter. The reason why mugwort was often added onto the duck, mugwort grows out in the spring. What they would do is, before the grains grow, they'll take mugwort or whatever eatable grasses that they could gather, they'll grind it up with the rice powders, and they'll steam that and they make it into a duck. And the most common form of that, which is passed on to these days, is ketduck. As you can see, it's very green. It looks very prehistoric, I know, but this ketduck was actually made by my mom. She went to a mill to have rice powdered, and she gathered the mugwort. She ground that out as well, and she put it all together, and she steamed it in our house. I actually eat a ketduck or two for dinner or breakfast. And ketduck means K means anything, so duck means a duck with whatever you can get put into it. And as you can see, my mom tries to put more mugwort than rice in the ketduck that she makes, so you can see the grass kind of texture in this ketduck. So this kind of duck is more primitive and is closer to the original duck that the Koreans used to eat. And all the duck that I've shown you until now are pretty fancy, and they were probably eaten by high-class Koreans. So all the duck that you've seen until now are usually eaten individually. They're not put into different other foods, and they're all sort of sticky and chewy. But there are duck that are not sticky or chewy, and this is the duck that I'm talking about. And these are actually put into Korean food or soup. And as you can see, the texture is neither chewy nor gluey. It's very, very hard, like a piece of wood. On our video next week, I'm going to show you some of the food where we put this kind of duck into it. I think I need to explain how duck is made. Duck is actually made of rice or different kind of grains, and it's basically a steamed rice or grain. What they do is they grind the grain or the rice, and they put it together and they steam it. And when they steam it, the starch comes out, so it becomes sticky or chewy. So it's basically something like bread, whereas bread is put in oven and baked on fire. The duck is steamed, so the starch comes out, making it chewy and sticky. And actually, they have different kind of duck in China and Japan as well. And so what they did in Korea is our ancestors used to eat duck instead of the rice. Especially the poor people ate a lot of duck, they say. In the previous video, I said that Koreans don't have a typical breakfast meal, but the poor people who couldn't afford to eat proper rice for a meal, they ate duck as their breakfast in Joseon Dynasty. And up to the 1960s or 70s, Koreans' regular meal looked totally different from what you see these days. Like when you see the Korean meal these days, you see more side dishes than rice and the soup. But this is what a regular Korean dish looked like even until the 1950s or 60s. You can see that the rice bowl is huge along with the soup bowl. So until the 1950s and 60s, Koreans ate more rice than the side dishes. So basically the side dishes were there for them to eat the rice. This is very similar to Europeans eating bread. Bread was their primary source of carbohydrates, right? And they added jam, salami, tomato, lettuce onto it so that they can eat that bread. So when you think of rice as a replacement for bread, it makes sense for Koreans to have eaten more rice than the side dishes. But this kind of changed these days, and we have more side dishes and little rice on a regular Korean meal. And because duck is made from rice, duck worked as a replacement of the rice for poor people, because when you steam something, the size of it gets bigger and you'll get full more easily. So like our video and subscribe to our channel that help us make better videos. Thank you very much.